Asterisk, the evening rain had started as a gentle mist, but by the time Margaret Williams reached the bank's ATM, it was coming down in earnest. She pulled her cardigan closer and stepped under the small overhang, joining the short line of people waiting. Their turn. Asterisk, at 62, Margaret had learned the value of patience. She'd raised 3 children mostly on her own after her husband passed when she was 45. She'd worked double shifts as a nurse at the county hospital, saved every penny she could, and now, finally, she was enjoying a quiet retirement with her small pension and the modest savings she'd managed to set aside. Asterisk, the line moved slowly. Margaret didn't mind. She watched the raindrops race down the glass windows of the bank, remembering how her youngest daughter used to bet on which droplet would reach the bottom first during long car rides. Such simple pleasures, such precious memories. Asterisk, there were 2 people ahead of her now. A young woman in scrubs, probably getting off a late shift at the hospital, Margaret thought with understanding, and ahead of her, an elderly gentleman counting bills carefully before approaching the machine. Asterisk, that's when she noticed him. Asterisk, a man in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, stood behind her. His clothes were expensive, she could tell that much, but they were wrinkled and damp. His dark hair was disheveled, not in a fashionable way, but as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He kept checking his phone, then shoving it back in his pocket with obvious frustration. Asterisk, Margaret had seen that look before, during her nursing years. She'd learned to read the subtle signs of someone barely holding themselves together. The too quick breathing, the way his hands trembled slightly, the hollow look in his eyes that spoke of shock, of loss. Asterisk, the elderly gentleman finished his transaction and walked away. The young woman stepped up to the ATM. Asterisk, the man behind Margaret began pacing the small space under the overhang. 3 steps one way, turn. 3 steps back. She could hear him muttering under his breath, though she couldn't make out the words. Asterisk, then. His phone rang. Asterisk, no. I understand, he said, his voice strained. But surely there's something. Anything left in the account? A pause. What do you mean frozen? For how long? Asterisk, Margaret tried not to listen, but in the confined space it was impossible not to overhear. Asterisk, my son, the man continued, his voice breaking slightly. He's at the hospital. I need 2. I just need enough for another pause. I see. Yes, I understand. Thank you. Asterisk, he ended the call and leaned against the brick wall. Closing his eyes, asterisk, the young woman finished her transaction and walked into the rain. It was Margaret's turn. Asterisk, she looked at the man, really looked at him. His expensive clothes told one story, but his face told another. She'd seen that expression in her own mirror 27 years ago, when the doctor had handed her the bill for her husband's final hospital stay, and she'd realized their savings account was nearly empty. Asterisk, without thinking, she turned to him. Would you like to go ahead of me? She asked gently. Asterisk, he looked up, startled. I'm sorry. Asterisk, you seem like you might be in more of a hurry than I am. Margaret said with a kind smile. Please. Go ahead. Asterisk, for a moment. The man just stared at her. His eyes glistened, and Margaret saw him swallow hard. Asterisk, that's very kind of you, he said softly. But I'm not sure it will matter. My accounts are. He stopped, seeming to realize he was sharing too much with a stranger. Asterisk, sometimes things have a way of working out, Margaret said simply. My grandmother used to say that kindness creates its own kind of luck. Asterisk, the man managed a weak smile. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman. Asterisk, she was. She also said that we're all just walking each other home. Margaret stepped aside and gestured toward the ATM. Go ahead, dear. Asterisk, as the man approached the machine. Margaret noticed his hands were shaking as he inserted his card. She turned away to give him privacy, but she could hear the soft beeps of the buttons. Then, silence, asterisk when she glanced back. He was staring at the screen in disbelief. Asterisk, is everything all right? She asked dot asterisk. He turned to her, his eyes wide with confusion and relief. I don't understand. This morning, everything was frozen, the lawyer said, after the investigation. He shook his head. But it's all here, everything. Asterisk Margaret didn't pretend to understand the details, but she understood the emotion. She'd felt it herself the day she'd received an unexpected insurance settlement that covered her husband's medical bills. Asterisk, sometimes the universe has better timing than we do, she said gently. Asterisk, the man completed his transaction quickly, then turned to face her fully. I'm David, he said. David Richardson. Asterisk Margaret Williams. Asterisk Margaret. I want you to know what you did just now, letting me go first. I was about to. He paused, collecting himself. My son is in the hospital. He's going to be fine, but I needed to pay for his treatment, and I thought. He stopped again, overwhelmed. Asterisk children. Margaret said with understanding. They're worth every sacrifice, aren't they? Asterisk David nodded. He's 8. He was in an accident 3 days ago. Not serious, thank God. But the medical bills, then my business partner. There was some financial trouble. I thought I'd lost everything. Asterisk Margaret completed her own simple transaction, just withdrawing enough cash for a weekly. Groceries then joined David under the overhang as the rain continued to fall. Asterisk, may I ask you something? David said. Asterisk, of course. Asterisk, why did you let me go first? You didn't know me. You didn't know my situation. Asterisk Margaret was quiet for a moment, watching the rain. When my husband was dying, she said finally, I was at the hospital almost every day for 3 months. One evening, I was in the cafeteria, counting out change to buy a cup of coffee. I was exhausted, worried, running on fumes. Asterisk, she paused, remembering. Asterisk, a woman I'd never seen before was behind me in line. She saw me counting pennies and quietly asked the cashier to put my coffee on her bill. Such a small thing, really. $2.50. But in that moment, it felt like the whole world was looking out for me. Asterisk, and you've been paying it forward ever since, David said softly. Asterisk, I suppose I have, though I never really thought of it that way. Margaret smiled. My grandmother was right about kindness, creating luck, but I think she might have had it backwards. Maybe luck creates opportunities for a kindness. Asterisk, David was quiet for a long moment. Margaret, I need to tell you something. I'm not just grateful for your kindness tonight. I'm what people would call wealthy, very wealthy, and I'd like to do something for you. Asterisk Margaret shook her head immediately. Oh dear, that's not necessary, really. Asterisk, please, hear me out. What if I told you that your kindness tonight might have saved my life? What if I told you that 5 minutes ago I was ready to give up on everything? Asterisk, the sincerity in his voice stopped Margaret's protests. Asterisk, let me share something with you. David continued, something that money can buy, but kindness makes meaningful. My son Tommy is going to recover completely. The doctors are certain now. And I want him to grow up in a world where people like you exist. People who show kindness to strangers, who trust in the goodness of others. Asterisk, he pulled out his phone. There's a scholarship fund I've been meaning to establish for nursing students, in honor of the nurses who took such good care of Tommy this week. He looked at Margaret meaningfully. I'd like to call it the Margaret Williams Nursing Scholarship, Asterisk Margaret felt tears well up in her eyes. David, I couldn't possibly. Asterisk, you're not taking anything from me. He said gently, you're giving me the chance to make sure your kindness ripples outward, that other people, years from now, will benefit from the choice you made tonight to let a stranger go first in line. Asterisk, the rain was beginning to soften. Margaret looked at David, really looked at him, and saw not a wealthy man trying to ease his conscience, but a father who had been given a second chance and wanted to make it count. Asterisk, will you tell me about Tommy? She asked. Asterisk, David's face lit up. He's remarkable. 8 years old and already reading at a high school level. He wants to be a doctor when he grows up. Says he wants to help people the way the nurses helped him this week. Asterisk, smart boy. Asterisk, he gets that from his mother. She passed away 2 years ago, and he's been my anchor ever since. Tonight, when I thought I might lose everything, I realized that nothing matters except being there for him. Asterisk, Margaret nodded. Children have a way of showing us what's truly important, don't they? Asterisk, as they stood together under the small overhang. To strangers who had found connection in an unexpected moment, Margaret thought about her grandmother's words. We're all just walking each other home. Asterisk, David, she said finally, I'll accept your scholarship offer on one condition. Asterisk, name it. Asterisk, promise me you'll teach Tommy that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in the kindness we show each other, especially when no one is watching. Asterisk, David extended his hand. It's a promise, Margaret, and thank you for everything. Asterisk, as they shook hands, the rain stopped completely, and Margaret Williams walked to her car, thinking about ripples in a pond, and how sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create waves that reach shores we'll never see. Asterisk, sometimes the universe ranges itself round a single moment of grace, and sometimes that moment happens at an ATM on a rainy evening, between two people who needed to remember that we're all in this together. Asterisk, walking each other home.